Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our HBWN regular panel. So we've got our regular panelists joining us today. So a big thank you to Leslie, Danielle, Sandra and Kelly for joining us. It's been a big 2 weeks since our last session, so I think it might be really good just to go straight to you, Leslie, for an update from a state government point of view and a local government, community point of view would be awesome for us. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, and great to be back on. And yeah, you're right, there has been quite a few changes in the last couple of weeks, and I know some of the other panellists, Sandra, and will talk about particularly the changes to JobKeeper. I guess my message is something that I'm just going to reiterate what I've said before, and that is the importance of people playing a role. At the end of the day, you know, we've had a lot of questions. It's interesting coming to the office saying, you know, should I do this? Should I have this event? And, you know, my response to them is, you know what? You actually need to take some personal responsibility. You need to think about, and this was kind of the message from Gladys last week, you know, we don't want to bring restrictions back in, particularly for travel again. But what she was asking the New South Wales community to do was to think about what you're doing over the weekend. Don't just go and do what you normally would do, and don't do it just because there aren't restrictions, but actually think about what you're doing and, you know, if are you doing something that's high risk, you know, going to a place where there's lots of people close together, for example, and take some responsibility yourself. Think about whether this is the best approach at this point in time, considering we're still in a pandemic. And quite frankly, we only have to look south to see what's happening. It is a serious second wave, as was often talked about, over 520 cases today. So we're not seeing it slow down in Victoria, and what we're seeing in New South Wales is certainly just that steady, you know, number of cases each day. So we're not seeing it really diminishing overall. I think there were 17 new cases today. Still some overseas travellers in quarantine, but still quite a few that are community transmission, and still a couple that actually are from unknown sources, which of course is where it becomes quite problematic in terms of tracing. You know, obviously there were a couple of changes that happened last Friday in terms of restrictions, and whilst, you know, we were reluctant to go back into some restrictions, there were changes, as Kelly will know, to the restaurant and cafe sector, which means that they now are the same, considered the same as pubs. But again, you know, we can change that as a community broadly if we actually do the right thing. And it's pretty horrifying. I know all of you would have seen some of the, particularly down in Melbourne, where people are refusing to do things like wear masks, refusing to get tested. I mean, it just is beyond belief that, you know, on the one hand, they're seeing record deaths in Victoria, but the other hand, there are still people who just don't get it, just don't see that this is such an issue. And what's it got to do with me? Well, actually, it's got everything to do with every one of us, making sure that we comply, that we think about what we do, and, you know, go back to those basics, because at the end of the day, those basic rules about hand sanitizing, about washing your hands, about social distancing, they are here to stay. So everyone, you better get used to it, and let's just get on with it. Now, we haven't, I know there's probably, I'm going to, you know, predict there'll be a message about masks, so I'll cover that now. Again, we haven't made it mandatory in New South Wales to wear masks, but again, the message is think about what you're doing. If you're going to a place where it's going to be really difficult to social distance, then wear a mask. You know, if you're going to the shopping centre, for example, and we know very well not everyone does social distance, you're crossing people over in the aisles, maybe you should think about wearing a mask. If you're going to somewhere where there's a gathering, where you know, again, it's going to be difficult for social distancing, wear a mask. We don't want to make it mandatory, and, you know, there are people who've rung my office and said you should. The problem with that is then you have to police it. And, you know, we think that people should be able to make some decisions for themselves. We think that people should be able to take some responsibility for their own actions and for looking after their own health and safety. So I'll leave it there, but of course, as usual, happy to take questions, you know, at the end.
Thank you so much, Leslie, and a really good, clear update for us here in our local community. But I'll just check in and see if anyone has any questions for Leslie. I'm happy for you to unmute your line and ask if you like. No? Okay, so some may come up as we progress, Leslie. So thanks again. And what we might do is go to you, Danielle, and for your update, please.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to be focusing on the assistance that's available predominantly from the federal government at the moment, and there's also some other grants from the state government that's also, both state and federal have been very receptive to assisting all of us in the bushfires and also with COVID-19. Now, the Deputy Prime Minister was up in Port Macquarie with Pat Conahan in the last, who's an MP for Cara, in the last couple of weeks ago. And he met with Jamie Harrison, who has Haralek in Port Macquarie. Now, that's a great example of where the federal government's helped a business locally buy new machinery. So a lot of people should be looking at where the government is focusing at the moment, and it is also heavily reliant on trying to create regional jobs. So when we met with Michael McCormack, we talked about what sort of things could be coming forward that we might be able to move forward. And they're things like the Manufacturing Modernisation Fund and also the Regional Jobs and Investment Package. And they traditionally come out towards the end of the year. So we were trying to see if those types of incentives will be pushing forward and coming out ahead a bit sooner, knowing the focus on regional jobs. So if anybody's in the position where they're looking at innovation in regional areas and they're looking in job growth and job creation, now is the absolute time to get grant ready. And if you have any questions on that in regards to the focus on funding for jobs and growth regionally, give us a call and we can see how we can position you in terms of getting ready for those grant applications that will be coming out. The other grants that are coming, the closing that I've discussed before in the next week or so will be the Rural Assistance Authority grants and loans. They're coming, they're closing in the next week or two. There are also some other loan grants that are out at the moment, which are the National Product Stewardship Investment Fund. And also there's an energy efficiency grants as well, which everybody in regional areas can look at. They're great grants focusing on recycling and sustainability. So they're mainly the focus at the moment of the grants that we've had a look at that are coming out. So it's very, very important. They talk about in government land about being shovel ready. And we are very focused on trying to get all of our clients at the moment very, very shovel ready for the funding that's about to come out regionally.
Excellent.
And that's probably about it for me.
That's great. Thank you. And really critical information for both our members and anyone that they're talking to, and they can point in your direction if they've got any questions. So just want to check in, Danielle, before we move to Sandra, and just ask, is there any deadlines that you want people to focus on in terms of that?
There's some, the bushfire grants that are coming under the Rural Assistance Authority, there's some, and loans, they're coming up on the 31st of July and the 4th of August. And I think the loans come out the 4th of August. The other grants are only just starting to roll out. So there's a little bit of so the stewardship one that opened on the 9th of July and that closes on the 21st of August. So that's not too bad. It's just pretty much the bushfire. If you haven't looked at complying to those or applying for those bushfire grants, now is absolutely the time before the deadline comes down.
Okay, great. All right. Any questions for Danielle before we move on from anyone online this afternoon, sorry. No? Okay, well, if you can just stay with us for the discussion, Danielle, because questions always seem to come out. But I think it's good timing to go to you, Sandra, and get an update from your point of view, please.
Okay, well, thanks, Kayley, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me again. Lots of changes on the JobKeeper front in the last week. We have many relieved business owners after last Tuesday's announcement by Treasury that JobKeeper support will be extended for another 6 months to March 2021. And the good news is also that the original JobKeeper that was set to run to the end of September will continue as originally expected with no changes there. So businesses don't need to meet any additional requirements to claim JobKeeper up to the end of September. So we do have JobKeeper 2 coming out that will extend the original JobKeeper, which is due to end at the end of September. We do have a good summary page infographic that the Institute of Chartered Accountants has put out that we've shared on our website, and I'll also share that on Poppy Connect, which is a really good summary for businesses just to understand how JobKeeper 2 is going to work. So there are some changes. So from the 28th of September, businesses need to reassess their eligibility for JobKeeper. And again, it's based on turnover. So the same turnover decline that was used for the original JobKeeper. So for businesses, that's 30%, not-for-profits, it's 15%, and the large businesses with turnover over 1 billion, it's 50%. So businesses need to reassess based on actual turnover for both the June quarter and the September quarter. So they need to meet that decline, that 30% decline for June and September. So it's a good opportunity now as businesses are preparing their business activity statements for June to just assess their decline for that period. And that will give them an indication whether they're still in or potentially in JobKeeper 2. So that's really the test, and the Treasury is saying that the turnover will be based on the BAS returns lodged. So there is a little bit of a, I guess, a timing issue in terms of establishing that decline. You need to have a look at your June quarter and also your September quarter. So it means early October, you'll need to be assessing whether you've met that decline, because you still need to meet the wage conditions of paying the minimum JobKeeper payment to your employees. There has been a change to the JobKeeper rates. So from the 28th of September, if businesses still qualify, the rate per fortnight per employee is going to go down from $1,500 to $1,200. And then from the 4th of January, it's going to go down to $1,000 per fortnight per employee. That's for those employees that were employed for on average, 20 hours or more. And the test period for that is the 4 pay periods before the 1st of March. So employees and businesses need to have a look at what their employees were earning for that period. If they were working less than on average 40 hours per week, the JobKeeper rate from the 28th of September goes down to $750 per fortnight, and then from the 4th of January it goes down to $650 per fortnight. So JobKeeper is still going to remain open for new recipients and new businesses if they qualify. So they need to meet the existing eligibility requirements and then the additional turnover tests after the 28th of September. And as I said, that test for the 20 hours it's a look back test. So we're looking at the 4 periods for February. Further details are still to be legislated. So we're governed at this stage by the fact sheet that's put out by Treasury. So I'll be sharing more details on our website in the coming weeks as the legislation does come out, and then also in our fortnightly sessions. Just another couple of changes that have been announced by the ATO is they've put some guidance out for any businesses affected by bushfires where their records may have been destroyed. So they've put some guidance out around reconstructing tax records. And there's also been an extension to the shortcut method of claiming home expenses to the end of September. And that's an 80 cents per hour method. I think that's it. The only other ones is deadlines for me to watch is claiming July JobKeeper payments will open on the 1st of August, which is this Saturday, through to the 14th of August. And just to continue to make sure that you're meeting those wage conditions and paying the minimum required and filing your STP, your single touch payroll on time.
Great. So lots of information to take in there, but thank you for summing it up for us. And I think you're right, like by sending things like that infographic and making that available to our members and to others, it means they've got a starting point, and of course they can access help from Sandra and her team if they want to check in on their questions, because every business obviously has individual needs and questions around that. But I'm just going to check with the rest of our participants this morning to see whether they have any questions for you, Sandra, or even just any questions that you think your clients or others might have, because if they, any questions that we ask Sandra are probably going to be relevant to a whole lot of other people who are either listening or viewing this at a later date. So we might go to you first, Kelly, if that's okay.
Yes, thanks, Kayley. So, Sandra, just a couple of quick questions in relation to JobKeeper 2. When businesses are applying to be eligible again for that second round, and they submit their June and September BAS for eligibility, is that going to be based on them being combined together for the decline, to qualify for the decline, or does it need to actually qualify separately for each quarter?
Yeah, that's right. So you need to have a look at your June and make sure that June's down your 30%, and then also again in September. So
okay.
The businesses obviously in June that might have started to pick up, in May and June, and they don't meet that 30%, that just rules them out for JobKeeper 2. Businesses that may still have a 30% decline or over 30% decline for June, but then start to pick up in September, then will also be ruled out for JobKeeper 2.
Okay,
so
that's comparable to the same period last year?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're comparing June 2020 to June 19. The Commissioner has said that they will be bringing out the alternate tests again where, say, a business hasn't been operating for that 12-month period, but we've yet to see details of that. So there will be further tests.
What about businesses who actually have had acquisitions during that period? So, for example, you've got more like, for example, our business, we may have more restaurants this year than what we did same time previous year. So therefore comparing figures aren't necessarily comparing apples with apples.
Yeah, that's right. I'd imagine they'll come through in the alternate tests. So with the original JobKeeper, there were tests obviously for new businesses, so where they didn't have a comparable period, but then also where they've already started to experience an increase in turnover, but then experienced a drop. So if you're comparing same period last time, you haven't seen that the business has started to grow. So whether they've acquired new assets or they've done a bit of a restructure. So I'd imagine that the alternate test will take that into account in the same way they did for the first JobKeeper.
Okay. I know we've briefly discussed this offline before, but I guess for anyone that may be viewing later on, in terms of JobKeeper and employees who have resigned or moved on for whatever reason, businesses are now having to obviously replace those employees. Is there any sort of anticipation that the federal government will allow businesses to continue to receive wage subsidies for the number of employees they have, and given that potentially is the same number that they had at the beginning of March, but not necessarily the same people that they've got employed, or are those subsidies just falling away as people leave and go and take up jobs elsewhere?
Yeah, at this stage, that's the way it's looking, because it was originally intended to support the employees at the time that were employed at the 1st of March. So all of the requirements for eligibility remain, so that those employees had to be employed, either full-time or part-time on the 1st of March, or if they were casual, on a consistent basis for 12 months prior to the 1st of March. So there's been no change to that at this stage. So if you've had employees either leave or, for some reason are not still there and they're being replaced, I can't see at this stage that they'll be eligible.
So essentially JobKeeper is supporting employees, not necessarily supporting employers.
Yeah, it's a difficult one.
Yeah. Sorry, I had another question, possibly for Leslie. And the hospitality industry you mentioned in your talk just before, in particular restaurants and cafes have had to increase restrictions as of last week, and they, obviously are incurring some businesses significant costs to accommodate additional staff for extra sign-ins and managing COVID safety marshals and additional hygiene measures and sanitising of equipment and premises, etc. Is the state government actually assessing whether there's going to be any support available for businesses to fund those additional costs that they're now incurring to maintain the restrictions and the compliance?
So you're talking specifically about staff, because you have to have a hygiene marshal at the door and so on?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, but wouldn't you be, why wouldn't you be using staff that you already have?
So we're using staff that we already have, yeah. But to manage it efficiently, we've rostered one extra person per shift to ensure that we can maintain that compliance, because if you get busy and that person's then waiting tables or doing something else, and they're distracted from the responsibility of actually managing the compliance of, the COVID safety plan.
Look, I'm not aware. I mean, generally, I suppose I should say that, in terms of employees' costs, that's something that generally is covered by the federal government. But if you're talking, I mean, obviously there was the funds that we provided initially, the $10,000 and then the additional $3,000. And I guess it's up to businesses about how they utilise those funds. We weren't prescriptive about how they could be used. So I guess potentially you could use some of that funding. Look, I'm happy to ask some questions about it, but at this stage, no, not that I'm aware of.
That would be great, Leslie, because for businesses like ours, we haven't been eligible for the $10,000 or the $3,000, so we don't have those additional funds to allocate to support these new restrictions that are now in place.
Yeah, and of course we acknowledge that not everyone was able to apply for those funds, and as you know, every business is set up very differently, so it's very hard to make make something available that's going to suit everybody. But yeah, I take on board your comments, but to be frank, at this stage I'm not aware that there's going to be additional funding for those types of roles. Okay.
Thank you. I would appreciate if you could just, as I said, even just, as you said, take it back, because, there are additional costs involved to support the restrictions and support what the state government is, putting in place to keep the community safe.
Yeah, yeah.
Great questions, and definitely questions that I'm sure are on a lot of people's minds, particularly in our community when it's those industries are such a big part of our local businesses. I'm just going to see if there's any final questions from anyone at all. And then I'll go to you, Kelly, for a Hastings Businesswomen's Network update for all the people who are listening and viewing. Does anyone else have any questions for Sandra or Leslie, Danielle? So Kelly, could you just give us an update on a few things that are happening in the local business network, please?
Sure, thanks Kayley. So just following on from what Leslie mentioned earlier in regard to keeping our community safe, but also the feedback that we've received from our HBWN members about wanting to have that personal connection. And so as a committee we've made a decision to start easing HBWN back into some face-to-face events, but meeting COVID compliance and safety, and we've become a COVID safe registered organisation. We have our COVID safety plan and guidelines which are published on our website, and so we're really pleased that keeping all of that in mind, we're going to be running a business roadshow of events. So we're going to keep them small, and HBWN is actually going to go to our towns and have these smaller events. So we'll be having three events in 3 locations in August, and with 3 dynamic speakers at each of those events. So we have Sandy Bennett from Muscle Function, Vanessa Lawrence from the Style Vibe, and our very own Kayley Riddle from People Engine, who will be talking about getting back to work and back to business. So we'll be having topics covered across wake up, dress up and front up, and getting our members back into business mode, whether that's behind the screen in a Zoom mode, or whether that is face-to-face business. The tickets for these events are strictly limited to 20 people, and they will be held in private function areas so that we can again maintain that social and physical distancing as part of that program. So if you're keen, all of the details for these events and these fabulous speakers and what they'll be presenting are on the HBWN website now, and we'll have more detailed information being emailed out to our members tomorrow. So we would encourage you, if you're keen to just get some further energy back into your business. It has been hard for some people to get back into the swing of things, but also if you're mindful about wanting to be safe and keeping our community safe, we're bearing all of that in mind as well. So we're really excited that we've got the opportunity to have these events and reach out to our members, and we really appreciate our three speakers who are going to really deliver some powerful content to help our members get back to business.
Great, thanks Kelly. And so those tickets are available now on our website, is that right?
Yes, they're available now. The dates are Tuesday the 11th of August in the Camden Haven, Thursday the 13th of August in Port Macquarie, I think, and the
other way around.
The other way around. 13th of August is in Wauchope, and then Tuesday the 18th of August is in Port Macquarie. Yep.
And where are they going to be held? What events are we privileged enough to be attending?
Okay, so in the Camden Haven, we will be at Mansfield Estate. So we're actually getting a sneak peek. They don't actually officially launch as Mansfield Estate at Grants Beach until September. So we'll be having private access to their estate and function area. And all of these events are breakfast events. So there'll be a light breakfast, and we'll have a spectacular view over Grants Beach and the Camden Haven region from Mansfield Estate. In Wauchope, we'll be at Sheathers on High, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with Tanya and her wonderful cafe there. We had an event there last year, but we'll be in the private function area out the back of Sheathers on High. And in Port Macquarie, we'll be at Ridges in one of their function rooms there. So they're the three locations and the three events, and all the details are on the HBWN website, and tickets are available online now.
That's awesome, thank you. Yum. All right, any questions for Kelly? No, that sounds really exciting, and I know I'm looking forward to it. And as Kelly said, a lot of our members can't wait to see each other face to face, but knowing that they'll be doing it in a really safe way is really important. So that's awesome. So if you can spread the word about that, and hopefully we'll see some of you there as well. So I might just go around the room and see if anyone has any final words, and then we'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your Monday. So we might start with you, Sandra. Anything final to ask or to add?
No, just really a reminder if you are registered for JobKeeper to claim for July from Saturday onwards, and then also just to keep your records as up to date as you can, just to assess your turnover, and just to start having a look to see whether you might qualify for JobKeeper 2 based on your June quarter's results. And keep an eye on our website too for any updates as legislation comes out.
Great, thank you. And any questions, Sandra and her team are available, which is great. And it's so responsive, I know from personally speaking, they just get back to you so quickly, which is great. Danielle, anything final from you and on behalf of Cara?
On behalf of Cara, absolutely. She would be saying, make sure that everybody is not self-disqualifying. You probably say that's
certainly
the line. It is the quick and the dead in terms of getting deadlines are coming up at on the 31st and the 4th of August for some bushfire loans and grants. But make sure people are looking at grant strategy. A lot of people sort of, again, self-disqualify from grant funding. If you're uncertain, please look it up online, give us a call. Just don't self-disqualify, particularly at this time.
Great. That's really good and really strong, clear message. Anything final from you, Kelly, before we go to Leslie?
No, just check out those events. As I said, we're excited that we're able to bring HBWN to our towns and to our members, so that we can encourage women to get back to business and connect with each other.
Great, thank you. And obviously we'll keep you posted if anything does shift around those events in the coming weeks. Leslie, any final message from you?
Look, a couple of things. First of all, I think a huge shout out to the HBWN. I think even the discussions that we're having, but I think it's great to see that you're, doing what your members are asking. That's really trying to get out and get that personal contact again, which is so important. I don't think any of us imagined when we started this journey in March that we would still be here today, and obviously there's still a way to go in terms of working through the pandemic. I also want to do a shout out to those really creative people that are making the masks. I'm obviously off to Sydney in a moment when I finished here, and there'll be places I'll be going that I don't normally go to, and so I want to do a shout out, and I want to show you how creative the masks can be. They're so
hey.
How's that one?
That's awesome.
Nice and colourful. And I've got a couple to deliver to the Premier straight from the beautiful Port Macquarie, so hopefully he appreciates it. But yeah, I think, I guess my point of that is, let's all be responsible. Let's think about the decisions we personally make, because that can make the difference to how our community works through the pandemic.
That's great, Leslie. Thank you so much. What a great role model. And you're right, like there's so many people, instead of complaining, are just doing something about it. And, we don't know what, as Leslie says to us all the time, every day is different. So we could all be wearing masks before long, or we just choose to wear them when we know that the risk is there and that we're doing the right thing. And, prevention is so much better than being in the situation that some communities are in. So thank you and good luck in Sydney, and just keep doing, such a great job to protect us and our people and our future. So we're going to let everyone go. So a big thank you to our panel, and thank you to anyone that's listening or viewing on YouTube. And we will see you again soon.